Okay, folks, welcome all back. Today we are talking about the newly made matchup, which was made about a week ago now, officially announced, and there's been mixed opinions on it. We're talking about Tony Ferguson versus Paddy the Baddy Pimblett, or Patrick Pimblett, as Tony Ferguson likes to call him in recent interviews, saying he called Nate Nathan, and now he's calling Paddy Patrick, which I suppose is his name, so that is right enough in this instance. But we've got a few things to speak about. Number one, we're going to talk about the hate that this matchup is getting now. I mean, it's been no secret. The way I've spoken about Paddy Pimblett on this channel has never been particularly kind. You know, I very much loved how his rise was. I bought his merch. You know, I was very much a fan of him. Then how he handled the Jared Gordon loss. I say loss. The Jared Gordon win. In my mind, I was very gutted with how he handled that in the post-fight press conference. Just the language he was using to, you know, it's very different on the night of the fight. And even since then, you know, he was in a few stream chats, even said to some streamers like, "Look, I thought the fight was closer than it was on the night." Or sorry, I didn't realize the fight was as close as it was. It was a terrible performance. One thing people do need to remember, and I myself need to remind myself, is he did break his foot. He snapped his Achilles in the first round of that fight, allegedly. You know, we don't know if it was specifically the first round. He says it was, so we have to take his word for it, you know. He's had a year off, probably 6 months off training, full contact training, and he was back in dilly-dally, and only recently I think he's fully back doing it. However, he's fighting Tony Ferguson. 6-fight win streak versus a 6-fight losing streak. I genuinely don't know who to pick in this matchup. I'm leaning, and this is the funny thing. Before we get into my prediction and who I was leaning towards, we got to take into consideration the community's thoughts on this fight. And what people are saying is genuinely that it's a terrible matchup, shouldn't have been made. Tony Ferguson's on a 6-fight losing streak. Why are they giving him to Paddy? Which I think is actually a really stupid argument. Yeah, he's had 6 losses in a row. But we'll get into that again in a minute, because it actually really bothers me how the community are sometimes, you know, disregarding El Cucuy's skill set. Yeah, he's a bit older, but he's always got that dog in him. He's always ready to turn it up to the next level. He never backs down. He's not a quitter. It's a tough test, first of all. It's a tough challenge. First of all, who has lost? His last 2 losses arguably have been not very good. Nate Diaz and Bobby Green are not great people to lose to. However, silly mistakes on Ferguson's part have been those reasons. And also, Ferguson's shown to be dangerous. He dropped Chandler. He dropped Gaethje. Granted, that was about 4 years ago. He dropped Chandler. He dropped Bobby Green. The Diaz performance was extremely underwhelming. However, it was a last-minute opponent change. There's a load of factors. You know, it was meant to be him versus Li Jingliang. You know, I'd imagine Ferguson was looking for a much more wrestling-heavy approach. Then he got chucked in there with Diaz, very different builds, different strength, more difficult, for example, to trip than I'd say someone like Li Jingliang is, you know. And, you know, Ferguson made a mistake with a double leg, got caught in a guillotine, you know. This type of thing, you know, and Ferguson has come out in interviews today and yesterday saying, look, he's faster than he's ever been. He's switched teams, new trainers, new everything, and this is his last opportunity. He's got no plans on retiring, and he really badly wants to win. And one thing that I've actually liked about Tony Ferguson's mindset going into this is, in the interview, he literally, on ESPN with Brett Okamoto, he said, I've lost 6 times in a row. I've messed up, I've lost my touch, I've lost my step. You know, how can you go from a 12-fight win streak to a 6-fight lose streak? It's just crazy how that happens sometimes in this sport. You realistically lose a few, then you come back. 6-fight losing streak's incredibly harsh to deal with and tough. Who knows how many more fights he's got in his contract. He needs a win. And he's been openly honest about, yeah, man, I'm old, but I can do this and I can do that, and I'm going to be back. And I think he's really coming down to earth a bit. You know, he's not so much being El Cucuy at the moment. He's been more like, okay, I'm Tony Ferguson, you know. And I think El Cucuy will come out on the night. But in training, in preparation, be Tony Ferguson, be down to earth, be humble. You're on a 6-fight losing streak, and show Paddy Pimblett what you've got. And also, let's see what Paddy Pimblett's got. People have not been liking this matchup. I think it's perfect. I called for this. If you go back to my how to save Paddy Pimblett's career video, I said give him Tony Ferguson next, and it's perfect. People don't understand how perfect this matchup is. Tony Ferguson has proved to be dangerous. He's fought the best of the best. He's a UFC veteran. He's been on a 12-fight win streak in his career in the UFC, which is incredibly difficult to do. Barely anybody does that. You see Oliveira doing that, Max Holloway doing that. No one else really doing that, you know? And still in the game, still on top of their game. Maybe Volkanovski at featherweight, you know. I mean, well, who else? Khabib did a really good job of it. But Tony Ferguson never got a title shot. And this is what I want to say, folks. He's still dangerous, and I think he's got a brilliant chance of going out there and catching Paddy with a straight right hand or a left hook uppercut, something like this. But Pimblett's got to go out there, and you know what Pimblett's got to do? He's got to ragdoll Tony Ferguson. If this fight is close, and yeah, granted, Tony Ferguson's had a few. Diaz was an alright close fight. Bobby Green and him were going back and forth. But just because of how much of a star and how popular Pimblett was and still potentially can be, if this is even remotely tip for tap, even remotely close, the fan base is going to slag Pimblett off for life. And it's just what happens, you know? Like, I've heard this quote recently, right? And this is what I kind of think about Pimblett's career going forward. You know, I don't think he's ever going to be a champion. He's entertaining. I love making videos on him. I love getting views from him. So I'd love him to keep winning. As much as I love Tony Ferguson, I don't know who to pick in this fight. As soon as it was announced, I said, Tony Ferguson. He's got his number. He's tricky. He's awkward. Pimblett doesn't seem to do very well against people that aren't traditional boxers. Jared Gordon, that performance was absolutely awful. You know, I'm just going to say it was an off night. I think Pimblett... I was really, I think, and the rest of the fan base was unimpressed. But this is the quote I'm about to tell you, okay? And this is what I think reminisces Pimblett's career perfectly. If Paddy Pimblett could walk on water, people would say he can't swim. That is where his career is going. This is the direction his career is going. Just pure and utter disregard for his skill set from the fan base. And I'm not saying he's a great world champion fighter. He's definitely not. You know, the Jared Gordon performance was, as I said, appalling, regardless of him breaking his foot or not in the first round. You know, like, it was a terrible performance, a really bitter taste he's left in our mouth. And as I said in my video a few months ago, when I called this, I said they'll give him Tony Ferguson. He needs to go out there and be a heel, talk his shit, and then go out there and absolutely ragdoll Ferguson. Use your offensive grappling up against the cage, knee him to bits, break the clinch, body shots, uppercuts, left hooks, wild left hooks. That's what Pimblett can offer up in this fight, and he can truly hurt Ferguson, I believe. But also Ferguson is massively dangerous. You know, he's dropped in his last 5 fights, I think he's dropped 3 of his opponents, 4 of his opponents, including Gaethje, including Chandler, including Bobby Green. You know, he didn't drop Oliveira, and he didn't drop Diaz, so it's just, he's still very dangerous. For all the MMA fans saying this is a terrible matchup, I completely disagree. I think it's a perfect matchup. I think, as I said a few months ago, it's the perfect next step. A veteran who's had a 12-fight win streak in the UFC, who's only fought killers, who's dropping these killers, regardless of being on a 6-fight losing streak. Ferguson, as I said, is dropping these individuals, regardless of losing. Pimblett arguably lost his last fight, is on a 6-fight win streak, 4-fight win streak in the UFC. Perfect next step for him. After this fight, if he makes light work, into the rankings he goes. We're not giving him special treatment, And this could be a very exciting, very entertaining fight. In terms of my prediction, in terms of who I think is going to win, look, Paddy Pimblett needs to chop the legs of Tony Ferguson. We've never seen Paddy throw too many leg kicks. He throws a lot of this up, hook kicks and a lot of question mark kicks, this type of thing. Wild, wacky, awkward little style he's got. I want to see jabs from Paddy Pimblett. Bop, jab, out the way, leg kick. And then you know what you do? You jab in, underhooks, close the distance, get him up against the cage. I think Paddy Pimblett will get it done. I'm going to say decision. I think a 29-28. I think Paddy Pimblett goes out there, scrapes the first round. Ferguson wins the second round convincingly, actually. He's landing better shots. Ferguson's doing well. 1-1 going into the third. And I'm going to say Paddy Pimblett by split decision. Another split decision for Paddy Pimblett. I can see him just holding Ferguson against the cage in the last round, dying for the win. Ferguson being tricky, Ferguson being old, that old veteran, just knowing how to survive, knowing how to get out there. I think there's a lot of pressure on Paddy Pimblett this fight, and I know he thrives under pressure. I know he's built for this, as he claims to be. I just don't think he's got the tools to dismantle Tony Ferguson. He's got the flash, he's got the charisma, he's got the flair, but he does not have the tools to dismantle Tony Ferguson. I'm going to say a split decision, another split decision for Paddy Pimblett. My opinion could change. I think he needs to jab Tony Ferguson, which I've never really seen Paddy do, singular jabs. He's not a single shot fighter. Low calf kicks, engage with the clinch underhooks, hold Ferguson up against the cage and make this one boring. Be the heel, make people hate you even more. If Paddy Pimblett could walk on water, people would say he couldn't swim. That's my official prediction for this fight. Thank you very much for watching this video, guys. I've really enjoyed making it. I love to hear your opinions, your thoughts. Let me know what you think. Thank you so much. I'll see you in the next one.